Okay, so I'm going to go over, this is Miss Prez, by the way, and I'm going to be doing factoring polynomials when a is greater than 1. So in my previous video, I did a trinomial that kind of looked like this, maybe. And this a term was this invisible 1. And it was very nice because there was about 3 steps, and boom, we were done. We factored the trinomial. In this case, a is greater than 1, and there's a lot more steps. Now, these steps aren't very complicated or hard. There's just a lot more, and you have to, kind of slow down and do them. So I'm going to go over those steps with you, and again, they're not difficult. You just got to, go through the process. So, and instructions. So make sure to have a piece of paper out and a pencil and write this down. And do write down the directions, because the directions tell you what you're going to do. We're going to take a trinomial in standard form and we're going to put it in factored form. So this is what our answer is going to look like. Okay, so let's dive into it. Step 1, identify A, B, and C. Now I do this because I want you to be able to see that A is greater than 1, and you have to use a certain set of steps that are different. Okay, oops, that's an ugly B, but there we go, B. Okay, so A we identified greater than 1. Got to go this route. So step 2, factor out the GCF if you can. Now I put a big if there because sometimes step 2 doesn't happen. You can't do it because it's just, they don't have any multiples in common. But if you can, definitely do it. And if you can't, then you can't. Now, some red flags should be going off in your head, and you can see that 4, 14, and 6 are all even, so we definitely can pull out something. In this case, it's a 2. Their greatest common multiple is a 2. And if you're not that great at multiples, that's okay. Just, list them out on a little scratch piece of paper and kind of find it. All right, we can't pull out an X because this guy's missing an X on the outside, on the end. So I can't pull out an X, even though the other 2 do. You need all 3, you need to have an X. So we're just going to pull out a 2. Now, when we do that, it doesn't magically disappear. It does go on the outside of the parentheses. So, and when we factor out a GCF, we're essentially dividing, right? We're pulling out this 2. How do we pull it out? Well, we divide. That's how we pull it out. And then again, it doesn't magically disappear. It goes on the outside of the parentheses. Now on the inside of these parentheses is going to be what's left over after we divide. So if we divide 4x squared divided by 2, we get a 2x squared. And 14x divided by 2, we get a 7x. And 6 divided by 2, we get a 3. Okay, step 3, multiply A and C together. Now the A and C I'm talking about are from our new kind of improved trinomial. So A equals 2, B now equals 7, and C now equals 3. So if I'm multiplying A and C together, this is 2 times 3, which is 6. Okay, next step, let's move right along. Find the factors of step 3 that add up to B. So if we do that kind of just, one by one, let's go ahead and do that. Find the factors of step 3. So step 3 was 6. So my factors of 6 are 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Now, if you have a bigger number with way more factors or multiples, then just keep listing them. List them all out. Especially if you're not very good with your multiples, just list them as many as you can find. All right. In this case, we only have 2 sets, so that's good for us. That add up to B. So my B term, like I said, was 7. So which one of these adds up to 7? Oh, this one's pretty easy. It's my 1 times 6. 1 times 6 is 6. Good. And 1 plus 6 equals 7. Yay. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to manipulate it and get the answer you want, but you just kind of manipulate the numbers and see if you can get your B term. All right, let's keep going. So replace the B term with the multiples found in step 4. So the multiples found in step 4 were 1 and 6, right? Those were our multiples. I circled them over here that we found, 1 and 6. So what does that mean? Replace my B term. Well, let's rewrite our equation that we had from step 2. Let's just go ahead and rewrite it all. And I'm going to keep this 2 on the outside in red Because I would say a lot of times when students get a problem wrong is because they forget that they pulled out a GCF in the very beginning. That guy he doesn't do anything for the rest of the time that we go through these 8 steps. He just kind of hangs out, he just chills out there, and then we forget about him, and then we don't include him in our answer. So I'm just going to keep putting him in red so we don't forget about him. Now, so replace the b term with the multiples found in step 4. So my b term is 7x. So I'm going to replace it with a 6x and a 1x. Now, notice I haven't changed the value of this problem at all, because what is 6x plus 7x, or sorry, 6x plus x? Well, it's 7x. So it still has the same value, right? It's still a 7x. I just changed the way it looked a little bit. And that's really important for you to understand in equations, and being able to manipulate them without changing the value. Okay, so step 6, let's keep moving along. Group the first 2 terms together and the last 2 terms. So this is from the previous step. So I'm just going to rewrite my previous step. And again, I'm going to keep that little 2 in red so we don't forget about him. He doesn't do anything. So I'm going to group my first 2 terms, right? And my last 2 terms. So I'm just grouping them together. That's it. Okay, I'll put little brackets around this because we're gonna need them. Okay, step 7. Factor out a GCF from each set. So let's go ahead again. Let's rewrite our problem. Okay. Two x squared plus 6x plus x plus 3. Okay, so let's look at each one of these and see what our greatest common factor is. So from the first set, I'll use a different color, I'll use green. What do they have in common? What multiple? Well, we can see that they're both even, and 2 only has one set of multiples, so we know they're both divisible by 2, but they also have a variable in common. So can I pull out an x squared from each set? Well, no, because this guy doesn't have a squared, right? We don't have that many x's to pull out from both terms. So the least, we can at least pull out 1x, right, from each term. They both at least have a 1x. So let's pull out a 2x. And when we pull out a GCF, again, we are essentially dividing. So it doesn't magically disappear. It goes on the outside of the parenthesis. And what's left over is after we divide. So a 2x squared divided by 2x, well, we're left with an x. And a 6x divided by a 2x, we're left with a 3. And again, we're not going to forget about this 2 on the outside. He's still here. Okay. All right, and what about here? Well, these two don't have anything in common, right? They don't have a multiple in common. They don't have a variable. So let's just do a 1 for all intensive purposes. We're going to divide by a 1. And we know anything divided by 1 is just itself. So this 1 goes on the outside, and we're still left over with this. Okay, now here I have to emphasize that if the two things are inside the parentheses are not the same, there's something wrong. These two things have to be the same. Okay, we'll put that in, have to be the same. Because you are going to pull out the GCF again, and the thing in the parentheses is your greatest common factor from these 2 terms. There are only 2 terms here, right? Because it's divided by or separated by a plus sign. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pull out the GCF. That's our final step, right? So step 8, again, factor out the GCF, aka the thing in the parentheses. So if it's not the same, if we don't have the same thing, then we can't pull out the GCF. Okay. So when we do that, we're going to divide by our x plus 3. And it doesn't magically disappear, it just goes on the outside of the parenthesis, right? Same as any old GCF. Okay, and then when I'm finished, what's left over? Well, these cross cancel, and I'm left with a 2x plus 1. And then, of course, my 2 gets dropped down. Don't forget about that 2. Okay, and that is it. 8 steps.